public offering is the first time you put the stock of your company out for other people to buy on the stock market. That's the initial public offering. Sometimes you'll hear it just called IPO, which obviously stands for that. If you are, I don't know how many of you do budgeting at home for yourself, but if you look at how much money you take in, your paycheck, let's say you made $5,000 this week, wouldn't that be nice? And you brought in $5,000, but you spent, you had to buy a new refrigerator and you had to buy food, clothing, whatever. A business's income statement shows how much has come in and how much has come out. And hopefully there will be a profit at the end of that. Okay. Now, if a business owns things, for example, a business might own the building that it's housed in, that would be considered an asset. The trucks that a company uses to deliver products, or the machines that it uses to make products, those are all assets. And if you take everything that you own and compare it to what you owe on those things, that's called your equity. It's kind of the same way if you have a house and maybe some of you own a home, or you're paying the bank for your home. So for example, if your house is worth $200,000, but you owe $180,000, you only have $20,000 in equity. And that's how a business runs the same way. Okay, now I'm looking at another screen. So if I might miss, if you have a question or anything, feel free to say something. Okay. Let's talk about corporate bonds. So sometimes a company tries to raise, it might need money to, it needs to raise some capital to add a building, to buy some machinery or whatever. And one way that a company finances that is by selling bonds. That's considered long-term financing, corporate bond. Bonds don't, it's not like stock where you're selling a share in the company, but it's a way that people can invest in your company. Okay, so let's get back to the equity question here. If you have, like we were saying, let's say you're a business owner, you own the building or you're buying the building, and it's worth, or let's say you own the building, you've paid for it, but say you need to raise up some money to increase your business. You want to add more buildings or whatever. You cannot sell the building that you have very easily. And that's called non-liquid assets. If you have cash in the bank, you just go to the bank, take it out, right? Even if you have some cash in like a long-term savings, I have and I don't know what it would be called, it's called a flex account, but it's a place that I save some of my money. I can't get to it maybe for 2 or 3 days. I have to email them and ask them to get it to me. That's still fairly liquid, but if you own a building or something and you can't turn it around immediately to convert it to cash, that's a non-liquid asset. Okay. If you borrow money and you're going to turn around and pay it back within 90 days or whatever, that's fine. But if you borrow money and you plan on paying it back like after over a year, then that is long-term financing. So short-term, long-term, that makes sense, right? But and again, I hope this is from your text, 1 year is considered long-term financing. Okay. Let's talk about the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. They're the ones that deal with complaints about discrimination, or if you think that you were hired unfair, if you were passed over for a job because of discrimination, or if you're at a job and you don't get promoted, something, that's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. And I noticed that here, no, let's skip that. Okay. There are a few terms that will be on your exam that are very easy. I think you know what orientation is for an employer. If you get a new job, you go through orientation. Networking, I think, might be one of the terms on there. That's just becoming acquainted with other people. And actually, it's kind of funny because people talk about office politics like it's a bad thing. There's always a little bit of what we call social currency. You do things for other people at work because, not because you want something from them, but if you do things for other people at work, they do things for you. That's a little bit of, you would say that's good office politics. Office politics is not always a bad thing. And so I just thought I'd throw that in there. And so part of networking is getting acquainted with other people at other companies, maybe. And then someday maybe you'll need a job or you'll need a reference. And that's networking there. So you're networking, just building relationships with people at your job or other jobs, whatever. Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about job enhancement or job enrichment. Sometimes job enlargement is adding more responsibilities to your job. Job enrichment is giving you a little bit more responsibility for your job, taking some ownership of it. And sometimes companies look at that as a way to help employees feel better about their jobs. You're probably familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where the triangular illustration. So at the very basics people want out of a job is enough money to buy food and to have shelter. Those are the very, very basic things. And then up at the top is to feel some sense of reward for your job. And sometimes job enrichment is a way to do that, because it makes you feel like there's a little bit of a challenge there. And you feel like you're not in a dead end streets or something. So that's job enrichment. The contingency planning is, I would call it plan B. You could have everything set in place. You could have your strategy for your company, but you need to think about what would happen if. That's contingency planning. Something is contingent on something else. So for example, this weekend, I'm doing a garden presentation at our library. And my plan B is to have it has to have 2 flash drives with my presentation on it. And I'm going to also send a copy of my presentation to the library in advance tomorrow in OneDrive. So that's just contingencies, just in case something might happen. Okay, and since all of you are right here, we could talk about my job at Home Depot. If you're ever at Home Depot, let's say, and you wanted to buy this drill and it's $149, but we're out of stock on it. We are allowed to, within a $50 limit, we are empowered. And so that's the term empowerment, giving employees the authority to make changes. So let's say the $149 drill is out of stock, but there's a $169 drill, same brand and everything. It's just maybe higher voltage. And we can upgrade that and, and give it to you for the same price. So we give you a $169 drill for $149. And a lot of companies do similar things and give their employees empowerment. Okay, let's talk a little bit about management styles. I won't say there's only 4. I don't know how many there are. It depends on the textbook you're reading. But one style of management is called laissez-faire. And I always think of the word lazy, but that's not what it means at all. Laissez-faire might be meaning laid back a little bit. So you might have a manager, or you might be a manager who is like, okay, that's fine with me. That works fine. And yeah, if you want to take time off a little bit early to go pick up your daughter from school, not a problem. But then also another form of management is the authoritarian, and the authoritarian one is the one that's a key term. And I think of like someone is the authority. They are the ones that sets the rules, and they say this is how it is. And I don't know how many of you were Seinfeld fans, but I think of the soup Nazi. No soup for you. And that's the authoritarian. This is the way it is. We don't change the rules. Your break is 15 minutes. You don't get 16, or you're going to get written up. There's a lot of different ways to interpret that authoritarian style, but it's all about making the decisions, telling people what to do, and then not having any freedom either way. Okay. And so then we'll talk a little bit about the chain of command and the way an organization is run. We talked about organizational structure, which is, and picture, the CEO at the top, or at a place like Home Depot, there's a store manager at the store level. There's one store manager. I'm going to use Home Depot a lot as an illustration because that's what I know. And I think a lot of you are probably familiar with retail and restaurants and things like that. So you kind of get the idea. But at Home Depot, we have one store manager at the top. Then we have 3 or 4 assistant managers. And each assistant manager is over different parts of the store, different functions, like the front end is the ops manager, operations manager. And that the chain of command is who each person reports to all the way up the line. So if I was garden associate for many, many years now, I'm a cashier or I work at the services desk. I report to, let's say, the garden supervisor. And the garden supervisor would report to the assistant manager, and the assistant manager reports to the store manager. That is all considered the chain of command. Now, in a small business, you might have the owner and maybe 6 employees, and that's it. Nobody here is reporting to anybody. They're all reporting directly to the owner. And that is considered a very flat structure because you only have the one layer. You've got the manager or the owner and all the employees. And so you could picture, if you were to draw it out, how flat that is. It's just flat. Whereas, and I tried to do this one time at Ivy Tech in the classroom, tried to do the organizational structure. And it was just very complicated because you've got the president and the chancellor and all that, and who knows where they all fit in between each other, right? That was kind of fun. And so that definitely a more complicated structure. And so if you have something like, if you have a structure that has a lot of layers, that's called a tall structure. If it only has one, it's considered flat because you could have them right here and here like this. And then the chain of command is who reports to whom. Okay. Oh, and I mentioned the hierarchy of human needs. That's by Maslow. That's actually, I think Maslow's hierarchy is one of your key terms. Now that I think about it, yep. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, at the very basic bottom, people need to be, they need food and shelter. So at that point, you're just taking a job, or a person is just taking a job just because they need a job. It's like, I don't care what I do, I just need a job. And actually, we're going to say about 15 years ago, I got divorced, and I was doing that too. I was just needing to make some money, and I did whatever I could, including washing windows. Like, I'm 12 feet high. I don't do that anymore. Okay. This is one of my favorites. Motivation is one of my favorite topics, actually. And by the way, it's only 1:15 right now. I figure we'll go for about a half an hour. I can go longer if you want, but if you have anything you want to talk about afterwards, we could certainly do that. So theories of motivation. One of my favorites is theory X and theory Y. And I think it's easy to remember because I think X is, you don't want that. The theory X is kind of would say that employees are lazy, they don't want to work. And if you're not looking, they're going to be off in the break room or something. And theory Y is a little bit more positive. You think the best of people. And I think if you're a hiring manager, you should certainly hire somebody that you think you can trust and hire somebody that you think is going to do a good job. And then why wouldn't you assume that they would, right? You'd have a more positive attitude if you're hiring somebody that you think is going to do a good job. Okay. Cash flow, the movement in and out of a business, money in, money out, money in, money out. It flows like water. That's easy enough to do. Okay, so a few terms on your sheet here refer to data. Data is information about customers or clients. It might refer to things like your name, your address, and all that, but it might also be a more general, like how many people in your town are over the age of whatever. In other words, it might not be specific to you, but that's data. And data doesn't really mean anything unless it's analyzed or compared to something. Okay, so it's just raw data. And then online data warehousing is where that data is kept, where it's stored. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Data warehousing, where you store it. Okay. Oh, and then the difference between intranet and internet. I think you all know what internet is. You know what the internet is. An intranet, I-N-T-R-A, intranet is just within the business. So let's say, for instance, you work for the local utility company and you've got the ability to do email or keep track of your sales and things like that just within that building or within that company. That's called intranet. And actually, come to think of it, it kind of reminds me of intramural. Isn't that like with sports too? Intramural and I don't know, maybe I said the wrong thing. maybe I don't know what I'm talking about there. I don't know much about sports. Let's see here, what else? I'm looking for might be some good topics. Some of the questions on your exam, I think you'll just be able to, just because you've been around the block a few times. Okay. I don't think I probably have to tell you what a salary is versus wages, but why not? If you're getting a salary, you're paid a certain amount of money for a week's time or a month's time or whatever. For years, I thought that meant you don't have to punch a clock or anything. In some cases, you still have to keep, depending on your business, you'd still have to keep track of your time and make sure that you're still getting the work done. So it just depends on the business here. Okay. But salary is where you're getting paid by the week or by the month instead of by the number of hours you work. And then of course, commission. A lot of companies would have a base salary, like you're going to get paid $500 a week, but then you would also have a commission on top of that, which encourages you to make sales. Okay, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on race, religion, sex, creed, or national origin. That's the Civil Rights Act, Title VII. Now, I will say that, never mind. Equal employment. We've covered a lot of them already. Oh no, I think I started at the end. So current ratio, if a ratio is when you compare one thing to another, that's a ratio. So if business would use a current ratio to see, or a bank, if they're wanting to loan a business money, might want to see how well they're doing financially. They might use their current ratio, which is comparing how much debt they have to, well, let me tell you, let me read it for you so I won't say it wrong. It measures, well, it's just that it measures a company's ability to pay current debts. So it's a ratio comparing how much you have in the bank and how much your assets are. You know what? I am going to find it. I'm going to read it to you. Or you know what? Just make sure you look that one up, because I'm afraid I'm explaining that one inaccurately or confusingly. Let me see here. And I don't want to mess you up here. Basically, how much you have at the moment, so you could tell if you're able to pay debt. Current ratio, page 486. I'm not above looking things up when I need to. I don't want to steer you guys wrong. Measures a firm's ability to generate cash. It's dividing current assets by current liabilities. Okay, so yeah, I was right on that. But basically, if you have assets worth, say, $200,000, we're talking about the buildings you own, the vehicles you own, and whatever, but you still owe some money on those things. Those are the liabilities, and so you compare the two. And so you might have a ratio of 2 to 1. You have $200,000 in assets and you owe 100,000 on there. That's the current ratio. The important thing to know is it's how they determine a firm's ability to pay debts. Okay. Oh, by the way, there's and I was kind of surprised, though, I don't know why. When I think of the 4 Ps in marketing, I don't know if any of you have taken marketing already. They refer to the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, placement, and promotion. And it's usually referred to as the 4 Ps. For some reason, I see distribution, the word distribution used instead of placement. I don't know why, but those are the 4 Ps of the marketing mix. So basically, you have to have a good product, you have to have it priced well, and a lot of time and effort goes into a company when they're putting a product out on the market, trying to decide what price to give it. You can't just say, it cost me this much, I want this much money profit for it, because if you overprice something, it's not going to sell. The product placement, or it's more of the product placement is making sure that products are in the right place at the right time. And so basically, let's say Valentine's Day, you see Valentine's for sale in the store the first 2 weeks of February, right? You're not going to see Valentine's in the store this time of year. GrubX is a product used to control grubs. It will be available. It'll be available in the spring, and you might see it right by the front door of a garden center because they want people to buy it then. Now, unfortunately, I've seen it at Home Depot in the fall, and it's not supposed to be used in the fall. So what am I going to say there? But that's what the placement of a product is. And then, of course, promotion, making sure you're advertising. Those are the 4 Ps, and they're referred to as the product mix, or that's the 4 Ps of the 4 Ps of a market mix. A product mix refers to the products that a company sells. So, for example, I want to say Levi's sells jeans, of course, but they also sell other things. Maybe they sell things, T-shirts advertising their name. That would be considered their product mix. Some companies sell nothing but just the one thing that they're known for. But usually companies will try to extend their brand and sell other things with their branding on it, because then they can make more money that way. And actually, another Home Depot, a little bit of trivia. For many years, there were Home Depot toys that were sold at Toys R Us. Now, I'm not sure why they made the decision to market that through Toys R Us, and we don't sell them at the stores. And Toys R Us, I think now is completely gone, or if it's at least gone in our area. So I don't know if anybody's selling that now, but that would be like a brand extension where you take the brand name and extend it into other products. Okay. Private label, store label, private brand, all the same thing. again, not a plug for Home Depot, but Behr paint is only sold at Home Depot. That would be considered a private brand. You might go to, I don't know if you have a Meijer in your neighborhood. Meijer has a private brand. Some of the products will be labeled. That's where I get my groceries. It'll say Meijer brand on it. But there's also, they changed some of the products. Now it's called Frederick by Meijer, which has a little bit more classy sound to it, I guess. I don't know. Like the coffee I buy is labeled Frederick by Meijer. And that's still a store brand. It's only sold there. It's their thing. Nobody else has it. Nobody else sells it. Okay. And so I mentioned the 4 Ps, product placement, and that there's also what's considered the utility of utility of form. So again, if you're selling something, and let's say Mother's Day is coming up, and you're selling, you have to have your product. I'm just repeating myself. That's another thing. Let's forget I said that. The distribution channel is the way in which a company gets its product to market. So from the producer all the way down to the store, the distribution channel. Oh, and let's talk a little bit about the product life cycle. I mentioned earlier this morning when I did this, I was thinking about fidget spinners, you know, how they were such a big thing for a while. There are probably still people who use those, or kids who need them. But when a product first comes out into the market, that's called the introduction stage. And it's introduced, and then the product grows. Like fidget spinners were everywhere for a while. And then when it gets to the peak, you would say it has matured. Now, some products will stay at that maturity level, like Tide laundry detergent, for example. It has matured. It's where it's going to be. It might be still growing, but I think it's pretty stable at this point. And then after a while, now Tide's not going anywhere anytime soon, but a lot of products will then eventually go into decline. So you think about that. It's introduced, it grows. Maybe I should do it down here. Introduction, and then it grows until it comes to a peak, and then it starts to slow down a little bit. And I don't see fidget spinners for sale as much as I used to, I'd say. Okay. Target market. Target market would be who your product is aimed for. And I'm sorry, these are all kind of in random order because I'm just looking at the final exam, going over these things with you. But a target market or a target audience would be who you are aiming your product for. Actually, my pastor was talking about now I can't remember the brand. He said that they admit that their target market is for guys in their 40s who still think they've got game. I thought that was funny. And that was the company, I guess. That was their version of it. So yeah, you might have as a target audience for the fidget spinners, let's say, it might be kids who have ADHD who need that, or I don't know, kids who get bored. It's just that's who your target is for. Horizontal merger, I have defined, my little grandson and I defined in a video. And so caveat emptor, a small business. What defines a small business? Okay, it's small. It's small. Does it make a whole lot of money compared to like a McDonald's or something? A small pancake house down the street is not going to anywhere be as profitable, or as not going to make as much money as something like McDonald's, although it might make a nice profit. But a small business is also defined as independently owned and not dominant in its field. So Chick-fil-A, Burger King, all those things are definitely dominant. Everybody knows about them, and they kind of are the ones who set the game for everybody else. The code of ethics, a guide to acceptable behavior that for an organization. Now, a lot of companies or businesses, maybe smaller business in particular, might have a code of ethics that's just not written out. I mean, there's no law that says you're a business, you have to have a code of ethics, and it has to be in writing. smaller company might not have it in writing. It's also possible that a customer or a business will have a code of ethics and not follow it. Or there is an kind of like an understory code of ethics that people know about. Wells Fargo is the first one that comes to mind, of course. Even though they had a code of ethics, they were prioritizing other things and not really following along. It seemed like business came first. The Small Business Administration is there as a government agency. Small Business Administration, obviously, to help develop small businesses, and sometimes does business loans. Oh, the gross domestic product, GDP. You'll hear that referred to sometimes in the news, the GDP. It's the total dollar value of all goods and services produced by people within the boundaries of a country during a time period. So it'll say the GDP for this quarter, for example, and they could compare it to see how it goes from quarter to quarter. And a recession is when you have at least 2 quarters of the gross domestic product in decline. Oh, a recession. Is that what I said? A recession. Okay. Oh, we'll talk about franchises a little bit. So you had this is the course that had the interview, and the person you're the interviewer, the person you interview is the interviewee. So we'll use the same endings for franchisor and franchisee. So a franchisor is the corporate company, the corporation that that will give a franchise to a small. Sorry, I didn't mean to minimize something. Let's go over here. So there are advantages and disadvantages. So the business ownership is called a franchise. The person who owns the company and is the franchisor, and the person who opens up the smaller part of it, the franchise, is the franchisee. And there are advantages and disadvantages for both. If you are opening a McDonald's, you are the franchisee, and you have to pay the franchisor a certain amount of money. And what you're paying them for is all the name recognition, the plug and play kind of thing, that you don't have to make any decisions. You can't decide, and that's one of the disadvantages as well. If you are a McDonald's franchisee, you cannot decide, I'm not making Big Macs this week, I don't like them, I'm going to try something new. You don't have that option. And so you have to do what the franchisor requires, but that also means you don't have to make any decisions. The biggest advantage is that you have the name recognition right off the bat. We had a Chick-fil-A open in Schererville, not too far from where I live, and there's lines already there because people know Chick-fil-A. NAFTA, does anybody want to guess or remember what the 3 countries are involved in NAFTA? I should be asking you some questions so you don't fall asleep. Anybody want to say? Then I will just tell you, okay. That's the North American Fair Trade. Fair trade, I always want to say free trade, fair trade. And the 3 countries in North America, Canada, United States, Mexico. That's pretty easy, right? Okay. Oh, I keep wanting to minimize by mistake. Okay, what do we got here? I see a message. Oh, you got it. Thanks, Brittany. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so, and of course, then importing is when you bring products in from another country. And sometimes countries will have an import quota. they will say you cannot import more than a certain amount of something. I don't know why I'm thinking Cuban cigars is one of them. There's a reason why we can't import too many Cuban cigars. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong on that. But that's the quota, that you cannot import more than a certain amount of a product or a certain amount of product from a certain country. And that is a quota. Licensing. One firm gives gives somebody the permission to use their name. So here's an example. Yesterday was Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And yeah, yesterday, today's the 5th. You could not open up a business and call it Luke Skywalker's Bistro. You just can't do that without permission from the Star Wars franchise, the Star Wars, whoever owns the name. And if they choose to give that to you, that would be called a license. That's a licensing agreement. And then you would have the license to do that. At Home Depot at Christmas time, we always sell these little wind-up toys. And some of them are, they got Christmas music in them or whatever. And some of them are just generic looking teddy bears or whatever. But then there are some that are Mickey Mouse or whatever character. And those are called licensed toys because they have the name brand on there. Okay, we are at 7:40. If anybody has to go, feel free to go. I think I'm going to be quitting here in a little bit. I didn't want to go past about 45 minutes. Okay, when we talked about the product placement and all that, there's also a term for the utility. Utility means usefulness. So if you are looking at a product, this is back into the marketing type thing again, the utility of place, the utility of time, the utility of form. So let's say, for instance, the utility of form would be making something in a better form, making it better or more desirable for people. I'm wondering if it would be like, let's say, a lawnmower, for example, is a gas-powered lawnmower. And if you were to produce one that is electric or gas power or battery operated, that might be the utility of form. You're changing the form to make it in a way that other people could use it. Yep. Yeah. Oh, I think we'll just do one more here. This is just-in-time inventory control. Now, I showed that little video where we had, where I talked about out-of-stock costs or stock-out costs and how it's bad for a business if they are out of a product when customers want it, or it's also bad if you have too much of a product. Just-in-time inventory, and it's written that way. Sometimes it'll say JIT or just-in-time with hyphens, and basically it's basically saying we want to have just enough product in so that we don't have our overheads stocked with stuff that we can't sell. We don't want to have Christmas products still in the receiving in June because we couldn't get rid of it all. But when it comes to something like manufacturing, if you are manufacturing patio furniture and you're out of stock on the aqua colored fabric to make this patio set, then you risk just not being able to make your products and not getting into the store and then not being able to sell them. And so you want to have just enough, but there again, you don't want to have so much that you are tripping over it and or having it go bad. Okay. Anybody have any questions about anything that we that maybe something was unclear to you? Because otherwise, I think it's about 45 minutes. I think that's enough for one day.